Flipside is a squad that is actually primarily famous purely for qualifying for majors. They're not actually a team that has, in general, made much of an impact on the final placings of majors. We've never seen them in a top 4 position or a team that anyone expected to be able to win them. But the very notion that they've been able to qualify for all these majors is what has been so astounding, because within the CIS region that they come from, they have never been considered the #1 team. They have always been the team behind, whether it was Virtus.pro in the past, whether it's Hellraisers, whether it's Gambit, whether obviously Na'Vi in the last couple of years. They've always been the team that doesn't have all the stars, that has people who come up who are rising talents, and then eventually they leave Flipside and they go somewhere else. Bondic leaves to Hellraisers. You have Simple go on to play in Na'Vi, another team, Liquid, etc. You have all these talents come up, Flamey, etc. You're not able to keep them in this squad. So the idea that with whatever they've got to work with, again and again, they're able to at least qualify for the majors has been a big accomplishment and a truly impressive kind of hallmark of a team that has a good tactical basis, because the core name within Flipside the entire time has been Blade, and he is a legendary leader from the CIS region. If you go back 10 years, in 2007, he took a team called Amazing Gaming from Ukraine to the first ever medal finish for a Ukrainian team in the history of Counter-Strike. They finished in the bronze medal position at World Cyber Games 2007 in what at the time was a huge upset run. And what he's established throughout his career, his legacy, has been being that prototypical, standard textbook in-game leader who runs a tactic. He has set roles for people. They have set smokes and flashes that go off at certain times. He studies the opponent's demos to look for their weaknesses. He builds anti-strats, which work specifically to counter what the opponent does well. And the idea within Flipside is we win by executing. We read the game and we execute. We're never going to have all the best players in our team. That will never be the remit for a team like Flipside, as it is for a Na'Vi or in the past teams like Hellraisers. So they have to do it with their brain, and the brain of the team is Blade. Now within that team, what's allowed them possibly to have maybe their best ever lineup actually at a major is discovering the player Electronic, because this Russian player has been a revelation in his short career within Flipside. He's been a very high-level fragger. He looks like the kind of explosive talent who's able to get multiple kills every round that normally we would expect to see playing in a Na'Vi, in a Hellraisers, in some of those bigger name teams. But at the moment, Flipside has him. And the key is, in the past, Flipside had talent, like Bondic was a talent, not on the level of Electronic and his skill level though. They had Simple, one of the best players of all time already, but Simple couldn't participate in the ESL majors, so he wasn't playing for Flipside at those majors. So this is one of the first times they're going to a major with some young firepower, with a tactical team, and as such, in theory, with a chance to do something beyond just be a fluke. When they had that top 8 at ESL 1 Cologne 2016, a big part of that result was NIP's failure in that deciding match, which allowed Flipside to win out. Flipside had players who had games of their lifetime, above and beyond what you'd normally expect from them. So you couldn't really look at that and say they're going to make impact on the playoffs, they're going to go deep. This is a team now where, sure, you still wouldn't anticipate them to be one of the best teams. You wouldn't expect them to have a big finish, but we know they have some firepower. Electronic can do a lot for them. We know Blade is a fantastic in-game leader. He will study the opponents. He'll come up with game plans. And so even though they've been also-rans in so many majors, this might be the major where they're the team that's the dangerous upset team for other teams, where maybe they're not going to do a deep finish themselves, but they can prevent someone else from doing a deep finish. So the most famous player in Flipside is Markelov, and he is a player who has gone through a radical transformation in his career. In Counter-Strike 1.6, he was one of the most skilled players in the world, and he was one of the most dominant star players. In fact, he was famous for when it became the big game, the semi-final or the final of a major, he would always take over and he would be the MVP and his teams would win the major, or they'd have a very big performance in those big matches. Now, in CSGO, early on, he was taking up that role within Na'Vi still. But ever since he left Na'Vi, when he went to Astana Dragons, then Hellraisers, and then later on over to Flipside, he's gradually developed more and more into this supportive role. And he even describes himself now as a support player. And so even though in 1.6, he is one of the most famously dominant AWP players of all time, he barely ever uses the AWP in Flipside. It's World Edit who uses the AWP. Instead, he is a support player, he is a rifle player, And he's someone who's going to play supportive roles. He's going to anchor a bomb site. He's going to try and stay alive as long as possible. He's going to use utility to delay the opponent. He's going to communicate well with his team. He's going to play a small role within the tactic, and he's not going to be the star player, but he's going to be a good support player, and he's going to be part of the backbone of the team. Markelov and Blade, the combination of how they play the supportive elements of the team, have been what's made Flipside a good tactical team, because they know that those elements are very experienced and will get the job done each time. Then it's on the world edits and the electronics of the world to have the firepower to take Flipside over the line. So the problem child of Flipside has always been world edit, because he is a player who, as an AWPer, has talent, clearly, and he has big games where he looks like a potential star, but he has, throughout his career, underwhelmed when it got to the majors, underwhelmed when it was the big game, playing against the big level opposition where you can prove yourself as one of the best players. Put him against the lower level opponents, put him in the smaller tournaments, he shines, he's one of the key pieces within the constellation of Flipside. But in those big matches, that's where he's still waiting to make that jump up. People are waiting to see, is he ready to become a true star player, have his impact on Flipside? Because then you pair a world edit who's playing at the peak of his capacity with Electronics' rising talents, and now Flipside wouldn't just be a tactically dangerous team, they'd be a team with legitimate firepower.